He didn't break into a vault. He broke into the myth of perfect security and walked out with $100 million in his pocket. The streets of Antwerp never sleep. Not really. Behind the polished windows of diamond showrooms and the hum of wealthy dealers speaking a dozen languages at once lies something colder, cleaner. A silence, built on billions in uncut stones and unspoken rules. But in February 2003, that silence cracked. Not with a bang, not with sirens, but with the sound of a man locking a vault door from the inside. Before that moment, Leonardo Notarbartolo lived like a shadow with a smile. Italian, mid-40s, always polite, always presentable. He rented an apartment near the Diamond District under a false name, took long walks, smoked cigars, shook hands with neighbors. He even said good morning to the same security guards he'd later outsmart. For 18 months, Leonardo played the part of a harmless, semi-retired jeweler. But beneath the surface, he wasn't there to sell diamonds. He was there to understand them. Not the stones, the system, the cameras, the motion detectors, the infrared, the vault door with a keyless magnetic lock, the heat sensors behind the wall, and the pressure-sensitive floor you couldn't even see. The Antwerp Diamond Center wasn't just secure, it was sacred. Europe's Fort Knox for gems. More than 160 safe boxes behind 3 steel doors and 6 layers of electronic security. Hundreds of millions in raw stones moved through its belly every week, all guarded by a vault so protected, even imagining a break-in felt stupid. But Leonardo didn't imagine. He observed, patient, quiet, surgical. His calm wasn't laziness, it was build-up, and behind that stillness, something was coming. Something that would shatter the illusion that any vault is truly unbreakable. And it started, as it always does, with a team. A locksmith with nerves of steel, a genius who could kill infrared without leaving a trace, a man who could pick electronic systems apart like puzzles, and one they only ever called the Monster. By the time the vault door opened, no alarms would sound, no guards would respond. Because by the time anyone realized what had happened, it was already too late. It didn't begin with blueprints. It began with observation, repetition, ritual. Leonardo Notarbartolo spent months posing as just another diamond merchant, walking in and out of the building, smiling at cameras, waving at guards, the same guards who would later be fired in disgrace. Every movement he made was part of something bigger. Every question he asked, every coffee he shared with a tenant, every glance toward the cameras, logged, memorized, stored in a mind built for precision. And eventually, he wasn't just observing the building, he was mapping its weaknesses. The vault was deep underground, protected by layers, motion detectors, magnetic field sensors, dual locks, a seismic alarm, and thermal sensors. The crown jewel of European security. But Leonardo wasn't alone, and that's what made it dangerous. He brought in 4 others, each with a specialty, each with no name spoken aloud. The Monster, the Muscle, could carry 100 pounds of loot like a duffel bag of groceries. Rumor had it he once held a man's jaw shut just by squeezing. The Genius, electronics expert, built custom devices to bypass motion sensors using nothing more than a modified hairspray can and a sheet of clear plastic. The King of Keys, a locksmith so skilled he could copy a key just by holding it once. The Shade, surveillance neutralizer, knew how to blind a camera with a flashlight beam so fast and precise it looked like a power glitch. And Leonardo? He was the face, the planner, the conductor of a silent orchestra. They rented a small office in the Diamond Center 2 floors above the vault, registered as a fake company. It gave them access, legally. From there, the slow invasion began. First, they installed a hidden camera above the vault door, disguised as a smoke detector. Every time a guard opened the vault, they filmed the combination. Watch the sequence frame by frame. Then they broke into the building at night. Not to steal, but to practice. They rehearsed the break-in multiple times, learning every inch of the route, how long each sensor took to reset, where the blind spots were, where the pressure plates began. They even recreated the vault lock in a warehouse to train on. But the key, the real key, wasn't high-tech. It was something almost poetic in its simplicity. A custodian left his key ring on a desk for just a few minutes. That's all the king of keys needed. A quick wax mold in the bathroom, one coffee break, turned into the key to the outer vault. But what about the magnetic lock on the final door? That's where the real genius showed up. They discovered the magnetic field could be bypassed with a custom-built device. A homemade rig that used aluminum, tape, and a wooden wedge. No one had ever tried it before. No one should have. But when they tested it in their fake vault setup, it worked. By February 2003, they weren't just planning a heist, they were planning an exit from reality. A robbery so flawless, so perfect, so impossible, that even security experts would stare at the aftermath and whisper one word: how? And the answer was simple. Because no one ever thought someone would dare to try. Saturday, February 15th, 2003. Midnight. The Diamond District was silent, wrapped in the stillness of a cold Belgian night. Cameras blinked. Guards sat in booths with thermoses of coffee, and the vault, 6 stories underground, slept beneath tons of reinforced steel and false confidence. But that night, something moved beneath the surface. Leonardo and his crew stepped into the Diamond Center using keys, passcodes, and a level of calm that could only come from obsession. They weren't rushing. They weren't guessing. They knew this place better than the people who built it. At precisely 12:15 a.m., the genius took the lead. First obstacle, the magnetic field on the vault door. They used a device crafted out of metal strips and wood to trick the sensor into thinking the door was still closed, even after it swung open. Next, the motion detectors. These were set to trigger at the faintest disturbance. He sprayed them with a custom aerosol that froze the sensors, buying a few crucial hours of invisibility. It wasn't just chemistry, it was art. One wrong angle, one miscalculation, and they'd all be ghosts in the system, but not the kind that vanish. Inside the vault chamber, time slowed. The pressure-sensitive floor? Covered with a layer of custom carpet panels they'd tested in their warehouse designed to distribute weight. They walked like dancers on ice. Even the monster moved with surgical grace. Then came the safe boxes. 123 of them, each requiring time, tools, and precision. The king of keys began opening box after box. No explosives, no brute force, just patience and silence. They didn't take everything. Only the best raw diamonds, gold bars, rare stones, bearer bonds, no names, no serial numbers, nothing that could be traced. By 5:30 a.m. they had filled more than a dozen duffel bags. They didn't run. They cleaned. They wiped surfaces, removed camera devices, took their tools. They even collected their trash. Candy wrappers, glove fibers, sweat cloths. Everything. The scene looked untouched, almost surgical. And then, they vanished. Out the same door they came in. Up the elevator. Out into the freezing dawn. They drove away in a beat-up white van. Not luxury, not drama. Just shadows fading into the morning mist. The building remained quiet. The alarm stayed silent. Even when the vault was found wide open the next business day, it took a full hour before anyone believed it was real. No broken doors, no tripped sensors, no forced entry, only an open vault and $100 million worth of nothing. For 48 hours, the diamond center buzzed like a disturbed hive. Investigators poured into the vault room like undertakers at a royal funeral. Cameras replayed nothing. Sensors reported nothing. Doors hadn't been forced. Alarms hadn't sounded. And yet, 123 safe boxes hung open like broken teeth. The perfect crime. Or so it seemed, because no matter how flawless the execution, there's always a crack. And in this story, it wasn't a security flaw. It was a man named Speedy. He wasn't part of the Core Four. He wasn't Leonardo's first pick. But every crew needs a driver, and Speedy was loyal, but sloppy. 2 days after the heist, Speedy panicked. He didn't think he was being followed. There were no sirens, no choppers, just his own guilt chewing at the corners of his mind. So, he did what no professional thief ever should. He rushed. He drove out to a forested area outside Antwerp, a quiet patch of woods not far from the E19 highway, and tried to burn the evidence. Bags, gloves, papers, tape, leftover tools, all of it. But the fire didn't take. It was damp. The kindling was wrong. Speedy panicked again. He fled, thinking at least he'd hidden the evidence well enough. He hadn't. A farmer spotted the scorched mess the next morning and called the police, annoyed that someone was trashing his land. It was supposed to be nothing, a routine cleanup. But when forensic teams arrived, what they found was a treasure chest of stupid. Half-burned documents tied directly to a rental unit, DNA on sweat cloths, bits of surveillance gear, and most damning of all, a receipt for a sandwich and bottle of wine from a local shop, time-stamped hours after the heist. That receipt led straight to Leonardo. Police raided his apartment. Inside, they found diamonds, not many, but enough. Enough to link, enough to question. Leonardo stayed calm. He said he was a jeweler, said the diamonds were his, said he knew nothing about any robbery. But investigators had something else, camera footage. A hidden feed had caught him entering the building earlier that week. Nothing criminal, but now, in the light of the heist, everything ordinary became suspicious. One by one, the pieces turned. The police followed the rental address from the scorched documents, a warehouse outside Antwerp. Inside, they found a full replica of the Diamond Center vault, training space, practice ground, the blueprint of a heist. Leonardo was arrested. His silence was stone. But the cracks had started, and they were spreading. Because for a crime that took years to plan, all it took was one man and a receipt to start bringing the whole thing down. Leonardo sat in a Belgian interrogation room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and gave them nothing. No names, no partners, no confession. He called the whole thing a misunderstanding. He said he was a victim of bad timing. He smiled, calm, charming, almost smug. But behind that smile, the truth was unraveling. The warehouse was the smoking gun, a blueprint carved in drywall and sawdust. The authorities now knew someone had trained for this, that the heist wasn't spontaneous or lucky. It was rehearsed, repeated, memorized. And yet, the diamonds were still missing. The police searched every known contact, every hideout, every back-channel fence in Europe. Nothing. Leonardo may have been caught, but the loot? The $100 million in raw stones? Gone. No one knew where they'd gone. Not a single gem had been traced back. Experts believed they'd been cut, recertified, laundered through dozens of dealers in dozens of countries. Maybe they were already sitting pretty in rings, necklaces, and vaults across the globe, worn by people who'd never know the history in their jewelry. Meanwhile, Leonardo went to trial. He denied everything. He said the warehouse was a failed jewelry business, that he was just a businessman, that maybe he was being framed. It didn't work. The judge saw through the act, or at least enough of it to hand him a 10-year prison sentence. Not for the full $100 million heist. The prosecution didn't have the evidence for that. But they had him for conspiracy, for possession, and most of all, for being the spider at the center of the web. Still, he never gave up the names, never turned in the others. Speedy had fled. The monster was never found. The genius? A ghost in the system. The diamonds? Not a trace. As Leonardo sat behind bars, journalists circled like vultures. Everyone wanted the same answer. Where's the loot? But he never flinched, never blinked, and then, just when the story was starting to fade, he said something no one expected. In a prison interview, Leonardo claimed he didn't steal the diamonds at all. He said he was hired to plan the heist, that someone else had executed it, that after he scoped out the vault, he was double-crossed by the very people who paid him. They used my blueprint, he said. They used my plan, then cut me out. No one knew if he was lying or rewriting the truth. But suddenly, what had seemed like a closed case cracked wide open again, because maybe the man behind the heist wasn't the man in the cell. Leonardo Notarbartolo served 9 years in a Belgian prison. He went in silent. He came out smiling. By 2012, the world had changed, but the heist still echoed through the Diamond District, like an old, unresolved song. Whispers followed him out of prison. Some said he still had access to the loot. Others believed he was just the fall guy, a decoy. But Leonardo never changed his story. He stuck to the myth. They betrayed me, he said. I gave them the plan. They vanished with the diamonds. I got nothing. And yet, he never worked again, never showed signs of being broke. No interviews for cash, no books, no big lifestyle, just silence and a smirk. The diamonds? Never recovered. Interpol still has them on a missing asset list. No serials, no DNA, no hope. The other crew members? Ghosts. Some say they retired, some say they were killed. One rumor places the genius in Argentina living under a fake name running a solar panel business. Another has the monster working security in Russia, but none of it's confirmed. The Antwerp diamond heist remains to this day one of the largest unsolved robberies in history. Not a single alarm tripped, not a single guard alerted. $100 million disappeared, without a sound. Security systems across Europe were rewritten after that. Vaults redesigned, protocols rewritten, cameras doubled, sensors tripled, but the truth lingers like smoke in a sealed room. No system is unbreakable. No vault is invincible. And sometimes, the greatest thefts don't end in arrests. They end in legends. Because in Antwerp, in 2003, a team of silent professionals didn't just rob a building, they robbed certainty. And the question that still haunts the diamond capital of the world isn't who did it. It's, where are they now? Thanks for watching. And remember, the perfect crime doesn't leave blood, it leaves silence. Catch you in the next one. Until then, stay sharp and stay free.